Hey guys, and welcome to the Fit Couple YouTube channel. Alisha and Tim Cruz. We just want to share a little bit more about my personal journey right now and where I am from a health standpoint, some things that we're doing, honestly, in hopes that it will just help somebody else. At the end of the day, we've both been through a lot with our health, and my prayer's always been that I don't mind going through the pain as long as we can use it for purpose. So if this is something that helps you guys out, please make sure, like, comment, subscribe, and share. Feel free to make sure if there's somebody that that it can help, that you would share it with them as well. So
yeah. So if you guys don't know, and there's a lot of backstory to both of our stories. We're not getting into crazy detail here, but Miss Alisha and myself, we're married, by the way. We are Fit Couple Coaching, and that's because we legitimately are a couple. Alisha has struggled with UC for, what has it been, 4 years now? Yeah. And I've struggled with Crohn's disease for almost the same exact amount of time. So this is going to be just a in-depth look at what Alisha's plan is. We're hoping to take you guys on this journey as she gets off of infusions this year. So Alisha, I'll let you just kind of take the floor.
Okay.
And then we'll kind of go over where you're at currently. What have we done in this last season, and then what are our plans moving forward? So catch them up.
Okay, I will do it. So just kind of paint a background story. I've always been super health conscious, active, tried to eat well the best I could along my life. I've always, learned things along the way and implemented those, and was healthy as could be until 4 years ago when I started noticing some symptoms. Had a colonoscopy, was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. In that process, they ended up putting me on Remicade infusions. The generic off-brand of that's called Inflectra or Infliximab. And what they did not talk to me about before they did so was that it would be the expectation that I would be on these for the rest of my life. And so, symptoms and whatnot were so severe at the time that I felt like I really didn't have an option not to. Sorry, I had stuff stuck in my chapstick. And, in the back of my mind, I always had the heart and the determination that, we'll get my body to a point where we can get off of these. Have done some different things with functional practitioners over the last 3 years that have done an incredible job of getting me to where I am today. At certain points in my journey, I literally couldn't walk outside for 10 minutes. Going anywhere was uncomfortable. I didn't leave my basement apartment at one point for over 3 weeks, and didn't have anybody to check on me. So it's so nice to have somebody by my side now. But just learning so many things through that process, everything from stress management, sleep, how our body absorbs nutrients, things to pay attention to that have all, played a factor and been a role in this. And what I will encourage anybody watching this is just to be your own advocate. You have to do a lot of your own research. There's people out there that are more than willing to help if they've been through it themselves. So this is one reason why it's on our heart to really document this, because we don't know. This is at the beginning of this chapter of the journey. And so the reason that we're where we are now is that my body's in a much better place. And our goal in our heart is to get me completely off of these infusions. There's more negative side effects than positive results at this point with them, but we can't just willy-nilly jump off of them. We have to proceed with caution and with wisdom. Yeah. And so we've tried to do that, reaching out to other people in the medical field, in the functional medicine world, doing different tests that will give us an idea, a true, hey, this is where your body is right now. I get blood work done very frequently.
Yeah, every 8 to 12 weeks, effectively.
Yes, yeah, at least. And so we have 4 years worth of data there that we've been looking at, and we can see trends in a positive light and a negative light, what might be going on with my body. So in lieu of all that, we knew in order to start this process of getting off the infusions that we needed to know where my body was right now. Let's get a snapshot of baseline so that we can put together a plan to move forward. So what we did was get what's called a Zoomer's test. So in layman's terms, it's like a stool sample, but it really shows you, it's very, very in-depth, and it shows you all the things about...
It's like way more in-depth than a traditional GI map that most people would get. Yeah, so it's like that times 10. It's very, very nitty-gritty.
Yes, and actually had Tim sit in with me on just the Zoom call to like go over that with my functional medicine practitioner that's helping us through this process. And it was very eye-opening just to see where my body was with different things. For me right now, where I am, there's some candida stuff that we've got to address, some parasite stuff. But before we really start this process, two things we needed to focus on is my immune system, like really getting it, you know, in a really good spot and supported. And then also my gut, like relieving just some distress on my gut to have it calm down a little bit, or, you know, put it in your terms, what would you say?
Relieve the gastric burden, basically. Yeah. So one of the things to just keep in mind, so I'm her husband. That's first and foremost my responsibility here, is to make sure that she's happy, healthy, and beautiful. But second is I am a nutritionist by trade. I'm also a strength coach. So this does, it kind of merges with my field, but it's a little bit outside of my scope. So we do leverage people like Andrea and a few other doctors that we have like relationships with. However, boots on the ground are what matter the most, right? So I'm with her every single day. So one of the things to keep in mind when we're doing the infusions, and they all do work a little bit different, is they are almost like immunosuppressant, right? When you have any kind of like autoimmune disorder, whether it's Crohn's, ulcerative colitis. I mean, I'm super lucky. I got 2 of them. I got Hashimoto's as well. Your body has a very robust, almost ridiculous response at attacking its own tissues. Right. So specifically with UC, it's mostly along the colon, and you are getting these ulcers, right? So ulcerative colitis being the inflammation of the colon, ulcer meaning it's actually carving out ulcers within the colon, right? Left untreated, left unchecked, you could go septic and die. Like there's actually a very serious issue here. So the reason that we use these drugs or these medications is to suppress that immune response, right? So the fear is if we were just to pull that out cold turkey, she would have almost like a rebound effect, where she would have a hyper response. It would come back not just to the level it was, but probably more so. So what we need to be aware of and super, super focused on is getting that immune system up to snuff. Right.
We call it upregulating,
like really
system.
Even more robust than you would even naturally want. So that's our first and foremost responsibility. Second, she's been making some gains lately. So I don't know if you know a lot about making gains, but you got to eat a lot of food, right? So like specifically calorically, I say we because we did actually do it together, but she's finished a cut right around our wedding in October, and then since then she's been on a linear track upwards in calories. Protein, carbs, fat.
And I have liked having more calories in my diet. Thank you very much.
But along with that journey, sometimes most of the time, adds a digestive burden, right? So if you're consuming 1,500 calories versus 3,500 calories, that 3,500 calories, it just takes a lot more to process all of that food.
Right.
Even if it is good food. And we do have our date night. We do have some definite foods that are off plan here and there. Which all of those, I would say, those are like drops in the bucket, but they start to add up over time from an inflammatory standpoint.
And especially if you have underlying things already. Yeah,
so they will build on top of each other. Like you will get hit and eventually hit a critical mass, which she has not. Right. She just presented with maybe just a few, I would say, very mild symptoms, but enough for us to pay attention to. So what we opted to do, we kind of had 2 choices here. We were left with either to kind of springboard this new phase, which the phase is getting her ready to get off of infusions. We either were left with using what's called the elemental diet approach, which is a 14 to 21 day, basically a liquid fast. Meal fast-ish type of a plan. It's mostly like pre-digested, foods from pre-digested carbohydrates, quite a bit of like MCT, like medium chain triglyceride fats, and very much no whole source protein, but a lot of pre-digested essential amino acids. They do come in the form of whey isolate, but it is pre-digested. So, that definitely is like the sledgehammer for an inflammatory response, right? So it's going to squash it really fast. However, I feel like with her lifestyle, she trains roughly 4 to 5 days a week, really hard. It's not like she's going to stop doing that. And in my opinion, anything that's going to require her to stop being active is a bad idea. That's why I wasn't a fan of the HCG diet. That's why I'm not a fan of a lot of things. They're like, hey, you can do this.
HCG's not one I've even heard of.
That was way back in the day. It was like Dr. Oz, regardless. My mom did, yeah. It was like a 500 calorie diet where they actually told you don't work out.
500 calories. Yeah. If you don't lose weight, only eating 500 calories.
And then they give you this drug for like a lot of money, and it's ironic because that drug does not help you lose fat, but the starvation does. So you think like, oh, if I spent $300 on this drug, I'm going to lose weight. Regardless, we're going off on a crazy tangent. With that being said, though, I feel like if you need the sledgehammer, use the sledgehammer. And the sledgehammer is very much akin to if she was in a serious flare-up. Like when I had my worst of my Crohn's symptoms, when I was vomiting all the time, I was literally, losing 40 pounds in a month, like coughing up blood. Like it was scary. That's a really bad state. That would make sense to do a fast, right? Like I'm not going to the gym at that point anyway, right? So like I'm just trying to survive, trying to squash it with whatever I can. For you, you have some mild inflammation, some gastric distress here and there. I would say it's very nominal right now. So I feel like that's a little extreme of a protocol. So we opted for a secondary approach, which is similar in nature in that we're still trying to squash inflammation as best we can. We still want to supply her body with not just the caloric needs that she has, but also with the raw materials to recover from workouts and to still have energy throughout the day and actually still continue to progress within the gym. So what we opted to do is it's kind of like this hybrid between a low FODMAP approach and almost like a GAPS protocol, which if you're not familiar with those, it's very common with people with digestive issues, right? So you have, whether it's irritable bowel syndrome or the forms of IBD like we both have, very commonly used, specifically the GAPS protocol. And what we were doing is we're choosing from this low FODMAP list, and it's all foods that cause zero inflammatory response within the body, or predictably zero response in the body. So it is
for the average individual,
a fairly limited approach. So what we did, and we can kind of walk through this, is we readjusted her calorie needs. So she's about the same calorically, but we readjust that only using foods that are from those lists. So that is kind of where we're at currently. Alisha does have some questions for me. So hopefully we can kind of walk you through our thought process of why we're doing what we're doing. And so if you need to adopt or can adopt some of this stuff, there's absolutely utility. And even if we're not taking all of it, like there are some utility from just knowing a couple things.
And everybody's an individual and unique. So please, find somebody that can help you, like, especially from a functional medicine standpoint. We're not here trying to diagnose, correct, prevent, cure anything that you might have. But we're hoping that just walking through this journey and what we're doing might help you in whatever you might be dealing with, or maybe somebody that you love. But we did bring, this is our whiteboard. It stays in our kitchen.
Diet hack.
Just to make life easy, right? So on the left side is all of Tim's meals. On the right side are mine. And we keep this updated. And it's nice, guys, even with us being married. Like if he's running errands in town or something, he can text me and be like, hey, can you start meal number 3 for me? Or like whatever. Or, if I'm busy and on a Zoom call, like he can just automatically start my pre-workout meal because he knows we're going to work out later. But I've updated it for this new protocol that we're doing. I'm still getting in 5 meals a day. So below here is just instructions. Like those are our air fryer hack notes.
Cooking hack notes.
Cooking hack notes. But this is like a base, like 6 days a week. And then this one in purple is just for like a refeed day, which we do on Saturday. It's usually our date night, and things of that nature. So I was ready and prepared to do whatever we needed to in this next step, but I love having my husband's expertise. And as soon as he just heard about, the details behind the 14-day liquid option, since I'm not in a flare, like we're really doing this more as preventative, because think of like the infusions. Just say you have like a little brush fire and the infusions are keeping that at bay. If we were to take those away and lift it off, you give it oxygen and all of this can become a forest fire, right? So we're just trying to just really put this out. So when we take infusions off,
there's nothing.
We're okay. We're fine. And this is where we're very proactive in our health. Unfortunately, a lot of times people don't take the necessary steps so that they can get off of medication. And that's why so many people are on prescription drugs for like long term. So I guess one of the big things that you know, because it made me really sad when I did see just one of the adjustments from what I was doing before in my meal plan to now was the difference in protein. Yes. It's not vast, but can you explain to them a little bit more why we took more of that out?
And I think that's a really good point. So I'm super pro protein.
So am I.
And I believe most of the recommendations by the FDA are staggeringly too low, and it aids to our obesity problem in the United States. Let's just say that. Make an entire video.
Aside.
No so aside. Before, she was sitting right around that 1 gram per body pound of protein per day. What for you is right around that. It's like 135 to 145. It kind of varied just a little bit from day to day. But one of the downsides of a lot of protein is that protein by nature is a very large complex molecule, and it takes a lot to break down. Right? So if you think about, I mean, have you ever had this experience? I know I have. Where you've thrown up and there's been steak in there, and you're like, I haven't had steak in like 3 days. Like, what the hell?
Thank goodness it's been a really long time since I've
super common, right?
I have had that non-digested meat before.
Exactly, right? So like the point is that meat takes a long time to digest. I've never once seen potato come up unless I vomited like right after eating a potato. It's always the meat, the proteins that tend to come back up. And it's because the gastric emptying time, specifically of red meat and other very complex like protein molecules, can take 8+ hours to digest, right? Versus if we take, you know, any of like even just for instance like eggs or egg whites, right? They're like a 2 to 3 hour like gastric empty time, meaning they're clearing the gut quite quickly. And so what we wanted to do, number one, is bring the total digestive burden down by bringing down your protein. Right now, you aren't super low. It's still right around 100 grams per day.
Yeah.
So she's right around that 0.75, 0.8, which is still within the range. Like if you look at a lot of the, at least the sports research around protein, it seems to be about that, I mean, they use kilos, right? So it's like 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilo, which is about 0.8 to 1 gram per pound, right? So you're sitting at that bottom end of that threshold still, but we reduced that. So that's the purpose. My question for you is, it's been since Monday since we started, so it's been 3 days, depending on what days you watch this, but 3 days. How have you felt just in the 3 days as far as like satiety, and also do you feel like you're backed up at all? Not from a bathroom standpoint, but like feeling like you're digesting food well.
No, I definitely feel like I'm digesting food well. I do feel like lighter and less inflamed even already. And I was already on a pretty clean, you know, diet regimen. But it's funny when your body's already got a little fire going, that even just the slightest things can attribute to that. I am a little more hungry than I was before, but obvious reasons, and we were kind of expecting that. We expected that. But I'm way less hungry, I feel like, than if I was doing just that liquid.
You would be
option.
hungry. We would not be making this video.
I was gonna say you would probably not want to be around me at that point, but no, I mean expected. But I mean I still get to eat 5 times a day, so we're giving my body enough rest in between each of those meals. And another big thing, and this is something that the Zoomer's test pointed out even. Is making sure that I'm chewing my food enough times before I swallow it. Our teeth are a lot harder than the acid that's in our gut. So the less that we chew it here, the more work this acid has to do to break it down. And that was something that my Zoomer's test showed was, you know, even if you couldn't see food particles in my stool, which I couldn't when, you know, I did that test, but it's still showing that it's not being, you know.
Well, for one, they're looking at it under a microscope.
Right.
So they can still see undigested food particles in it. And the one thing that stood out to me was the fermented levels of protein that were in it. And I think that's probably pretty common in most people's stool.
Right.
However, certain forms of bacteria will grow off of undigested fermented protein, right? So like that is one of the main causative reasons that we brought that down, was to effectively starve those bad bacteria out of your gut, or at least allow them to come down to more of a normal range. But I also think that brings up, you are also taking a few digestive supplements as well that kind of aid this process. Do you mind like just saying, or at least talking about the couple that you're currently taking? I know
I will, best I know. It's not all come in yet. One is like a hydrochloric acid, just to really
betaine,
support
HCl,
with that. And then there's going to be something else that has like bowel support to it. But there's several others.
Yeah, you have like a peptidase or a protease. So within your digestive like complex, it's betaine hydrochloric acid, right? So betaine HCl, which is very good at emulsifying, proteins. It helps with the acidity in your stomach specifically. And then second, there is a protein enzyme in there as well. So like, I believe it's a peptidase, but it might be a protease.
Yeah,
but it's a specific enzyme that helps breaking down protein.
Yeah.
And then you will be getting ox bile. That is the bile support, which is for the emulsification of fat within the gallbladder that helps your body produce adequate bile.
Look at you just teeing things up. Anyway.
Yeah. But I do think that's important though, because it isn't just the nutritional strategies that's like two wheels or two pedals on a bicycle, right? Like we need to change things nutritionally, but also we need to give your body the support that it needs that you might not have enough of. Right. And especially when you're consuming, that much protein. Even this is still quite a bit for the average person.
Yeah, I was gonna say the average person, especially the women
American,
that we, coach, most are not even eating as much protein as I'm eating right now. So.
Yeah, but it is absolutely needed. So I think that's important to bring up, that it's not just the nutritional changes. There are some supplemental changes too for just assistance along the way.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And there's other things we're doing to like support my immune system through this, and just things to keep on hand that are not going to continue to, worsen my gut microbiome. Yeah,
if anything, we're trying to help the sucker out and help it grow in the right way. Yeah.
So teeing up to my next question was, can you explain to them a little bit more the reasons why we changed out the fat sources that I had access to before?
Yes.
So before, had some almond butter and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Now we're pretty much just coconut oil, avocado.
That's basically
pretty much
two main sources. There are other sources available, like grass-fed butter, ghee.
Yeah.
The main thing that we're thinking about here is, number one, is we actually raised your total fat quantity, because before you were only eating about 25 grams of fat. You're eating like the basic, like I would call it the minimum effective dose of fat for a female of your body weight.
Right.
So we actually. We brought protein down, which allowed us more calories to bring to. So we're still keeping the calories the same, so we're able to bring protein dietary fat back up. But the traditional fat, saturated fat, almond butter, that's a whole other side conversation, which I'll get to. But initially, if we think about the different types of fat, so we have most of the fat that we consume are long chain fatty acids, right? So same conversation around protein, very long molecule, takes a lot of enzymatic activity and acid and whatnot to break that down. Long chain fatty acids also take a lot of lipase, is one of the main enzymes that it takes. A lot of this happens within the gallbladder and the large intestine. So making sure that the reason we didn't choose those is because, again, we're trying to bring down the gastric burden. And those actually tend to slow digestion down even more. So instead, we opted for more medium chain triglycerides. You guys have probably heard of MCT. She could also use MCT oil, but we're going to be using more natural sources. So things like coconut oil, which is almost pure MCT. Avocados, which is more monounsaturated fat. So she is definitely still getting some of the health benefits from the monounsaturated fat. And then if she was to use like a ghee or grass-fed butter, that is definitely in the same vein as a medium chain triglyceride. So it's actually very easily digested. It actually kind of acts as like a little jumpstart if you're in keto, which you're not. But to kind of just touch on the almond butter, it isn't actually about the fat source in the almond butter. It's the fact that almonds, all nuts in general, flax seeds, peanuts, almonds, cashews, they all have a little bit of dietary fiber, and they can be irritating to the intestinal tract. And so when we think about ulcerative colitis or even Crohn's, you have inflammation that goes along the lumen, which is the interior wall of the inside of the colon and the small intestine, and those things can be very irritating to the gut. So if she's already has inflammation, we want to take those away. Same reason we don't have freaking blueberries in your plan too, right? So like it's all about like just reducing that irritation in the gut, and seeds and nuts tend to be very irritable to the gut.
And again, he tees it up just perfectly for me to add in one of the supplements that we're using just to help with my gut lining is glutamine.
Yes.
A couple of times.
Glutamine is, and there are some other things that you will be using in a bit, but glutamine is kind of the first one. So within the Zoomers test, and we'll just touch on this real quick, is one of the things that was very present is leaky gut, which is actually so much more common than people give it credit. Yeah. It basically what that means is it's intestinal permeability, right? So if you think about your intestines, I don't know if you can see that here, like they're supposed to be stuck together like this. And if you have like a little bit of gaps in between,
just more stuff.
And this is a macro example. We're talking about at the cellular level. Yeah. Nothing's really supposed to go through other than things that can diffuse through the membrane. But if we open up that gap just a little bit with leaky gut, then larger molecules can actually flow into the bloodstream uninhibited and cause pretty much a cytokine storm, which is a fancy way of saying an inflammatory response.
Right.
Yes.
Well, thank you for clarifying on that. I was checking my notes on the fat sources. The only other thing added was the extra virgin, like olive oil.
Which is a polyunsaturated fat, which, as you know, is a very good fat source. Yeah. But make sure you get the real stuff, because most olive oil in the United States is only a percentage of olive oil. The rest of it is generally some sort of seed oil, like it's cut with canola or safflower or sunflower. So you have to kind of be careful. And
which are all high inflammatory, the others that they're cut with.
Yes, and generally it's freaking expensive.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Expensive.
Yes. So back on protein, one of my questions that I think will be helpful for them. So I had a good deal of chicken in my meal plan before, but we switched it out with a little more turkey. Why do we do that?
Yeah, so that one is more just a personal decision, because chicken is normally totally fine. It generally is a very low inflammatory protein source, but there is quite a bit of research and specifically empirical evidence that if we continue to eat the same protein source over and over and over again, we can almost create like an acute histamine response to the protein source. So like if you, and before she was eating, I would say almost all your meals except for one meal during the day, meat meals, were chicken. Yeah. And you'd have like one beef meal at night, right? So like we just decided to swap out the chicken sources, because she's been doing it for, well, shoot, since I met her. So, and probably longer than that. So it's probably been a few years that you've been doing chicken as your main staple. And so we decided to just go turkey, because turkey and chicken, pretty damn similar. Yeah. And it gives a little change to the palate a little bit.
And while you're on that, and just from a satiety standpoint, etc., maybe touch on the egg whites and the whole eggs now.
So egg whites are one of those that I definitely see a lot of gastric distress if people just stick to pure egg whites. Myself included. If I do them for too long at one time, they'll get me. It mostly just presents in like a super farty kind of way. So like you just get gas, which is indicative of something digestively is not distress. Yeah, it's also a marital distress. But yeah, so that's why we moved that out. It's not that egg whites are bad. They're actually a very simple protein source. They're actually one of the only ones we have that is just literally pure protein. Right. There is not any grams of carbs or fat in it. So if you're counting the macros and you just need 30 more grams of protein,
egg whites are a great source.
Yeah. But if you overdo them, you can get a little gassy. So we decided to pull those out and go with whole eggs instead. But I will make this note. Since she is consuming whole eggs every single day, whether it's 3 or 1 on her refeed day, we are going for the pasture-raised eggs. And maybe you can speak to the difference in consuming them. What do you notice when you first use like pasture eggs versus like the normal eggs?
The yolks. The yolks are almost orange on a pasture-raised egg, and it has to do with the feed that the chickens are getting, the eggs that they produce, the whole 9 yards. If you get any other ones, there's a lot of things they'll do, like cage-free and all of these, but if you just compare the yolks, they're still like a super pastel yellow, if not almost white. And so it's just an instant way to look at it and go, this has way more like nutrition to it than.
And I think they could probably cheat that too, honestly. They could inject they do it with salmon, they inject dye. Yeah. But like the other thing I noticed is they're also like way more firm. So like when you cook them, they don't break, the yolks don't break as easy. Yeah. And one of the main things, just from like a very basic nutritional standpoint, is the chickens in feedlots or whatever, in these mass farm, like whether it's Tyson chicken or these massive like factory produced eggs, they're kept in pins, and they're generally fed soy pellets or some type of corn or wheat based, which is, I've never actually seen a wild chicken, so I don't really know what the hell they eat in the wild. But I bet it wasn't soy or or it probably was corn. They probably could have a little bit of corn. But a lot of times they're roaming around and eating bugs and shit. Like they're very much eating a different diet than something that's man-made. So what gets passed down, like, because it's not what you eat, it's what you eat has eaten, right? That's how biomagnification works. So what the chickens eat matters too. It presents in the eggs in higher levels of beta carotene specifically. That's what gives it the orange texture and color, right? And the same thing that's in wild-caught salmon, that's what makes it orange as well. The other thing that's very important to note is the differential in types of fat that is within the egg.
Right.
So, like, same with grass-fed beef versus grain-fed or grain-finished beef. You're going to see a big difference in the type of fat that presents within the animals. So, higher amounts of like saturated fat versus the like more omega-3 fatty acids. So eggs are not as drastic of a difference as like a grass-fed beef would be, or not even wild-caught salmon versus farm salmon is the biggest difference. There's almost no freaking omega-3s in a farm salmon. But regardless, that's why we decided, because you eat them every damn day, we really don't want to even tell our body to go up in cholesterol at all, even though digested cholesterol doesn't have very much effect on blood cholesterol. It still can have some effect, so we're not going to play roulette with your cholesterol level either. So that's what
I'm not mad about eggs being back in. I'm actually very grateful. So something I just want to encourage before I ask this next question is, or just allude to like why we made certain decisions in another portion, is always pay attention to your body and what your body is digesting or not digesting, because just because it's on a plan, if your body's not digesting it, you're not absorbing nutrition from that. So you want to make another swap, of similar source. So the leading question to that is behind just kind of the focus on the fruits and vegetables, like the pineapple, the kiwi, the spinach, things of that nature, why that is in the plan versus maybe like broccoli and some other options. Yeah,
so if we start with the fruit first, because I think that's a little bit of a more simple conversation. The first thing I think about is, number one, is preference, right? If she likes, a certain type of fruit and she doesn't like another type of fruit and they're both on the plan, why would I put the fruit that she doesn't like on the plan, right? So we also have to think about, number one, consistency, adherence. Like, if she's not going to follow it, or if she doesn't like it, she's not going to follow it for a very long time. So we're also not thinking of this diet plan as, yes, this is a phasical diet plan, but it still is the foundation for the rest of her diet, right? So the reason I chose specifically the kiwi and the pineapple, those are two fruits that they do present a lot of digestive aid as well. They actually have digestive enzymes within them naturally. The other one that would be on that list that just doesn't freaking taste good is papaya. Papaya has a bunch in there too. I've never liked papaya, and she agrees.
And we don't have bananas on here, but that's one too. Bananas that go with breakfast.
And bananas, it's completely different, because bananas are actually just super easy to digest. Unless you're me and you go into anaphylaxis because of them. But I die if I eat bananas. But that's not because of the bananas, because of me. So we chose based off of what's actually going to aid you, kind of the two birds with one stone type of mentality. But then also, what is going to be the easiest for you to digest? So I know some people who don't respond well to pineapple. And even though pineapple is supposed to be really good for digestion, you don't want to put it on their plan if it makes them like have any kind of symptoms, right? So like, and when I say symptoms, I'm not talking about like go to the hospital doctor symptoms. It's like, I get a little like brain foggy. I get some skin stuff going on. I get a little gassy. I feel my skin starts to like feel weird. Like there's a lot of like low level symptoms that are kind of like leading indicators to bigger things that are going on internally. So if we just keep building on that, we're going to find that big symptom. So that's what we pay attention to. And that's a really good point that Alisha brought up, is that you have to have, there's the science of coaching, right? There is this is what we know on paper is supposed to work.
Right.
That is 50% of the battle. The other 50% is the art of coaching, right? Which is paying attention to what the heck is actually happening with her in real time. So I could put this plan together and think, I'm so freaking proud of this plan. It's beautiful. And then she eats it on day one and she's like, I have diarrhea all day long. And I'm like, oh shit. Pun intended. No, pun intended. Just being funny here. But if that was the case, I would have to change the plan, no matter how pretty and perfect I thought it was. So there is the element of paying attention to what actually happens and making adjustments. And that's honestly where experience comes into play.
Yes, and I'm super, super grateful that I literally have him in my back pocket to help with all of these. And he pays attention as much to how I feel, my mood, my digestion, if I'm, crampy or gassy or like whatever the case may be. Like, he's very in tune with that and, asks a lot of questions. So, I think those are most of my big questions. Just some other, like, to put out there, baseline, trying to keep my body in a good space. Things that I'm doing as well is water. So we literally have like one of the water coolers. You can do the hot and cold water and get the filtered water, because even in this, like, tap water and a lot of other sources have a lot of heavy metals in them, and heavy metal burden has been a really big thing for my body in the past. So it's just an element I'm trying not to reintroduce when I'm trying to, increase.
And let's be honest, the water here tastes like garbage. So, and this
We
is
do
not
live in the
Bozeman.
Treasure
This is not in
State.
Bozeman. This is just this place. Like our garbage, our water's.
Right. So I don't know. I've never drank it here.
It's fat. Yeah.
So, those are, just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
That's something a lot of times people don't think about, is things like, where's your water coming from? And you need to drink plenty of water if you or somebody dealing with UC. Just in general, if you have a body, you need to drink.
If you are breathing air, you need to pay attention to how much water you drink.
Yeah, you need to drink plenty of water. But if you are struggling with something like UC, and as much the water thing is just to not be getting additional stuff from whether it's sodas or tea or coffees or whatever. Not saying you can't on occasion. If it is going to make you go crazy, if you don't have coffee twice a week, have coffee. But don't have it every single day.
Twice a week? What kind of prison you put these people in? You mean twice a day, right?
I was going to say, he has it every day, and it's okay. I taste bitter too strongly. Like, my DNA test told us that. And now
within the context of the plant, though, that coffee is actually very counterintuitive because of the acidity of it,
Right.
Yeah.
So, also not the best idea. But anyway, just I taste bitter more strongly, and I have to add too much creamer, which is dairy, which feeds candida, or sugar, which feeds candida. And again, that's something that we're trying to get a handle on, to help support my body. So I just want to reiterate again, even if you are super healthy and you're watching this, just there are little things that you can do to support your body just for you to feel better. Like, you're going to function better in life. You're not going to have the brain fog that you would if your diet is just crap, all puns intended on that. Like, what you put in your body does make a huge difference. But if you are going through some kind of health struggle, start with food, because it can make such a big difference. Is there anything else
I think just to kind of sum up with a couple like take home points for all of you that might be watching this. We went through a lot of stuff here, but really it was kind of simple, right? So we identified a problem, right? So the problem was she was having low level like gut irritation.
Well,
right?
not really. It was more than getting off infusions.
Right, but you were having low level gut inflammation, and that is an impediment to getting off of infusions.
Yes.
Right. So what I'm getting at is identify the problem, then do something. Right. Whether that is cutting out junk food, whether that is cutting out sugar, whether that is simply just following a plan, even if it's the most rudimentary basic plan, do something. In this world of a plethora of information, I would say an overabundance of information, we can get paralysis by analysis. So like, what's the perfect diet? It don't freaking matter. Just start something, right? Start something, and
progress over perfection, and just
the way I like to think about it is if you're going on a flight from LA to New York, and the plane gets off by 5 degrees, guess what the pilot does? It pulls that sucker back on track. So you can't know what you're doing wrong until you start, and then you can make these adjustments on the fly, and you're still moving forward. And then the couple take homes that every single person can do is, number one, hydration, making sure you're getting plenty of water. The FDA recommends about half your body weight in fluid ounces per day. And if you're not drinking any water, that's probably a really good place to start. But if you are drinking water, I would like to see most people get closer to a gallon per day.
Yes.
If you're bigger like I am, probably getting closer to a gallon and a half, 2 gallons, right? Tons of hydration. And then the second thing is walking, movement. The best thing, the most free thing you can do for your digestion is taking walks.
Motion is lotion.
It literally helps stimulate It helps stimulate the actual rhythmic motion of your GI tract, helping you eliminate. So, huge. Third is if you notice something is causing problems, pull it out.
Yeah.
Like if you notice every time I eat pizza, the next day I feel hungover and I didn't even get drunk last night, don't eat pizza. Like it's not that hard. Like people try to overcomplicate this stuff and it ends up making people not do anything. And I think the best thing you can do is keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method, right?
Yeah.
If you can keep it simple, people are going to do it. So make sure you have a problem, identify the problem, do something, drink water, and walk. That's it.
Yep. And if you're one of the UC cases, the only other two things that I would add to that is stress management and sleep. Those are both going to be really key factors. I have always been one that had to do things by myself until now. So it's nice to be able to kind of split that. But, you know, legit, whether it's toxic relationships you may need to kind of shed, even if it's for a season, you can still be respectful. But, you know, knowing how to deal with stress, whether it's breath work, it's journaling, maybe you know, sketch. I love some colored pencils. I love getting a kid's coloring book and just go into town with some colored pencils. You know, reading. We do like Bible reading every morning, you know, prayer time. There's lots of different ways that you can do that, but managing your stress, especially if you have any kind of gastric distress, or Crohn's, colitis, ulcerative colitis, diverticulitis, like any of that kind of stuff, the more stress that your body is under, it's going to go to your gut.
Yeah.
So.
And your body does not know the difference between physical and emotional stress.
And if you're only sleeping...
It's all stress.
Yes. And if you're only sleeping 5 hours a night, it's going to be really hard for your body to heal. So,
Amen.
Yes. But those are the only additions that I would have to add.
Cool.
So.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. We're gonna keep you guys informed as we go along this. Also, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends because we are trying to reach more people and help more people. That's honestly our heart here at Fit Couple Coaching. And so if you want to be a fit couple, make sure to reach out. All right, guys. Bye. Have an awesome night.